Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Dramatized by Janice Okoh. I am writing my story. The book would be entitled, "The World Was Silent When We Died." For the prologue, I will recount the story of the woman with the calabash. She sat on the floor of a train, squashed between crying people, shouting people, praying people. She was silent, caressing the covered calabash on her lap in a gentle rhythm until she crossed the Niger. And then she lifted the lid and asked others to look inside. For the cover, I'll draw a map of Nigeria and trace the boundaries where in the southeast, Biafra existed for 3 years.
Stop putting more in my glass.
We should have a bigger Pan-African response to what is happening in the American South.
Yeah.
You know, Pan-Africanism is fundamentally a European notion.
Odenigbo, I digress.
My master, Odenigbo, was a prominent senior lecturer at Nsukka University, the first indigenous university in Nigeria. It was situated in the south.
But in the bigger picture, we are all one race.
As a consequence of his position, Master always had guests.
Here we go.
The bigger picture of the white man.
Oh,
Can't you see?
Among them was Miss Adebayo,
Except
a
to white
Yoruba,
eyes.
who drank brandy like Master and was
because we are
loud.
all alike. We all have white oppression in common. Pan-Africanism is simply the most sensible response.
My point is that the only authentic identity for the African is the tribe. I am Nigerian because a white man created Nigeria and gave me that identity. I am black because the white man constructed black to be as different as possible from white. But I was Igbo before the white
But
man
my favorite
came.
was OKEOMA. He always wore a pair of shorts and had bushy hair with a pattern at the side that stood higher
you
than
only became
Master's.
aware that you were Igbo because of the white man.
And
The Pan-Igbo idea itself came only in the face of white domination.
OKEOMA.
You must see that tribe as it is today is as colonial a product as nation and race.
The Pan-Igbo idea existed long before the white man. Go and ask the elders in your village about your history. Huh? Bring more drinks.
I was 11 when I came to live with Master. I was his houseboy and cook.
What do you think, Olanna?
And I was Odenigbo's lover.
Olanna, face the lush color of rain-drenched earth, eyes large and slanted, body curvy, fleshy. I thought she belonged in a glass case where she could be admired.
Recently, where just a few years ago they weren't admitting Igbo children into their schools. Now the Igbos have one. They simply set one up themselves.
It is now that we have to begin to decolonize our education, not tomorrow. Now!
And there was also Mr. Richard.
You have finished, Mr. Richard.
Richard was a writer. He didn't talk much.
Fantastic chicken, thank you.
I was going out with Olanna's sister, Kainene.
He was English, white.
I shall probably write about how Nigeria was the prized creation of the British, how the British preferred the north. The heat there was pleasantly dry. The Hausa Fulani were narrow-featured and therefore superior to the Negroid southerners, Muslim and therefore as civilized as one could get for natives, feudal and therefore perfect for indirect rule. I shall mention how, pre-independence, the British gave the North control of the government, how nothing was done about the clamor of the minority groups, how at independence in 1960, Nigeria was a collection of fragments held in a fragile clasp.
Now leave it. It could be important. Stop.
Hello? Olanna. I'm always busy.
I met Kainene in the
How was
cocktail
it?
room of the Federal Palace Hotel. With her tight dress and brazen red lipstick, I assumed she was a politician's mistress. It turned out that she was a politician's daughter.
Richard, Olanna asked if you enjoyed the evening.
I enjoyed it very much. I find Odenigbo refreshingly different.
Did you hear that, Olanna? He thinks your revolutionary lover is refreshing. Yeah, that's what he said.
Kainene and her sister had received an expensive education and had attended university in London. They were extremely close. Despite this, I thought they were very different. Olanna seemed content to play wife to Odenigbo, whereas I knew Kainene's life would continue to operate fully if I were not in it.
Trying to foist Chief Okonji onto me in lieu of your absence. It seems as if Chief Okonji wants an affair in exchange of a contract.
She ran her father's businesses, wanted to prove herself to him, whereas I wanted to prove myself to her.
Madhu, meet Richard.
In the evenings, guests, usually company people negotiating jobs and government officials negotiating bribes, would drop by.
Kainene has told me a lot about you.
Hello?
The man who held his hand out to me was huge, his cologne cloying. And he seemed too familiar with Kainene.
Kainene first told me about you a month ago when we briefly met up. I just came back from Pakistan. So you and Kainene met in Lagos?
Yes.
And you got a foreign research grant at Nsukka University?
Yes, Madhu, he's a writer, I told you.
I'm interested in the southeast, as it's the land of Igbo, Ugwu art and wrote pot. That's why I came to Nigeria in the first place.
To write about our art.
How long have you known each other?
My family's compound in Umunachi is right next to hers. Our forefathers are said to be related. Isn't that so, Kainene? Huh? Only that your people stole our land and we cast you out.
It was your people who stole the land.
He sat down into the sofa like he owned the place. Of course, we had to join him.
How do you find Nigeria, Richard? Aside from the art.
I like it very much.
I trained at Sandhurst. What I hated most was the cold. I'm sure you get very homesick here.
I don't think so at all.
Well, the British have just decided to control immigration from the Commonwealth, haven't they? They want people to stay in their own countries. The irony, of course, is that we in the Commonwealth can't control the British moving to our country.
Another tall man in uniform was being let in by Ikejide, Kainene's houseboy.
I told him to meet me here. Excuse me. Kaduna.
I've got the contract to supply army boots for the battalions in Kaduna.
Oh, that's nice.
The man in charge was Igbo, and Madhu said he was keen to give the contract to a fellow Igbo, so I was lucky. And he's only asking for a 5% cut.
Madhu's married, isn't he?
Yes. His wife is doing her bachelor's in London.
If they were having an affair, I would never have known. I was only at Kainene's at the weekends. In the week, I spent my evenings in Nsukka at Odenigbo's.
I didn't think our pepper was made for your type, Richard.
His face was red, and his nose was running as he ate the final pieces of tripe of Ugwu's pepper
that
soup.
Richard was an African in his past life.
He even drank the broth.
It's fantastic. It clears one up.
Okay, let's adjourn to the living room. I want to hear some Rex Lawson and then some Osadebe.
Rex Lawson is a little derivative now, isn't he? Waifu and Daira are better musicians.
All music is derivative, OKEOMA.
Rex Lawson is a true Nigerian, does not cleave to his Kalibari tribe. He sings in all our major languages, and that's original. A certain reason enough to like him, so.
That's reason not to like him, Mr. ADEBAYO. This nationalism that means we should aspire to indifference about our individual
Don't waste your
cultures
time asking
It was my
Mr.
favourite
Liberal
part of the
about
evening.
high life. He's
When
never
Ugwu would
understood
bring
it.
more drinks, Olanna would dim the lights, and we would talk.
I don't think that the French should have tested their atomic weapons in Algeria, but why did it matter so much to Balewa to break off diplomatic
Because
relations
he
with
wants to
France?
deflect from his defense pact with the British. Slighting the French will always please his masters, the British.
Balewa was the first prime minister of an independent Nigeria.
I disagree, Odenigbo. He did it because he wants the North Africans to like him.
Didn't he say that Africans are not ready to rule themselves in Rhodesia? If the British tell him to call himself a castrated monkey, he will.
Yes. That night, Odenigbo and OKEOMA were in fighting form.
Refuse to see things how they truly are. We're living
How
in a
is
time of great
your
white
book
evil.
coming along?
They are dehumanizing
Miss
blacks in
ADEBAYO
South
was sitting
Africa and
beside me.
They fermented what happened in the Congo.
ploughing on.
Is it a novel about expatriates?
Well, no, not quite. I'm very interested in Igbo Ugwu art, and I wanted to make that a central part of the book.
How so?
I've been fascinated by the bronzes since I first read about them. The details are stunning. It's quite incredible that these people had perfected the complicated art of lost wax casting during the time of the Viking raids.
You sound surprised, as if you never imagined these people capable of such things.
I looked at her, and there was a new and quiet disdain in the way she stared back.
Surely deserves one of your poems, OKEOMA.
I got up to leave. Odenigbo, thank you for your hospitality, but it's getting late.
Have another beer before you go.
I'm off to Port Harcourt in the morning, so I must get to... But he had already turned his back to me.
That reminds me, Ugwu, have you prepared the guest room for tomorrow? My mother will be coming.
Yes, sir.
I have an appointment, but I will try to get home early.
That night, when I got home, I looked at my manuscript. A few pages of rapturous descriptions of the bronzes. I crumpled them page by page until I had a jagged pile next to the dustbin. And then I went to bed with the sensation of warm blood in my ears.
Master's mother had the same stock build, dark skin, and vibrant energy as her son. It was as if she would never need help carrying her water pots or lowering a stack of firewood from her head.
Mama, no. You are the one that is Ugwu.
I was surprised to see the young woman with downcast eyes standing beside her, holding bags. I'd expected that she would come alone.
Did your journey go well?
Yes. Chukuduhain.
Mama looked at the radiogram.
When will my son be back?
He will be returning in the evening. He said you should rest, Mama, when you come. I am cooking rice and chicken.
Rest.
She unpacked foodstuffs from a bag. Dried fish and cocoyams and spices and bitter leaf.
I have brought ingredients to make a proper soup for my son. I know you try, but you are only a boy. What does a boy know about real cooking? Is that not so, Amala? Does a boy belong in the kitchen?
No, Mama.
You see, Ugwu, a boy does not belong in the kitchen.
She was already breaking up some dried fish at the counter, extracting the needle-like bones. She peered suspiciously at the stove, knocked on the pressure cooker, tapped the pots with her fingers.
My son wastes money on these expensive things. Do you not see, Amala?
Yes, Mama.
Those belong to my madam, Mama. She bought many things from Lagos.
Amala, come and prepare the cocoyams.
Yes, Mama.
Amala put the cocoyams in a pot with water. Then she looked helplessly at the stove.
Ugwu, light the fire for her. We are village people. We only know firewood.
Yes, Mama.
Put some water to boil for me, Ugwu. And then cut these Ugwu leaves for the soup.
Yes, Mama.
Ma appeared at the kitchen door. Her dress was smart-fitting. Her smiling face was full of light.
No. I am Olanna. Did you go well?
Olanna hugged the older woman. But Master's mother kept her hands by her side.
Yes. Our journey went well.
Good afternoon, Ma. Welcome.
Ma hugged Amala briefly.
Is this Odenigbo's relative from home, Mama?
Amala helps me in the house.
Mama had turned her back to Olanna and was stirring the soup.
Mama, Bianodu Anna. You should not bother in the kitchen. You should rest. Let Ugwu do it.
I want to cook proper soup for my son.
Of course, Mama. At least let me help you. I'll go and change.
I hear you did not suck your mother's breasts.
What?
They say you did not suck your mother's breasts. Please, go back and tell those who sent you that you did not find my son. Tell your fellow witches that you did not see him. Did you hear me? Tell them that nobody's medicine will work on my son. He will not marry an abnormal woman unless you kill me first.
Mama,
There's a witch here. There's a witch in my son's house. Neighbors.
She opened the back door and went outside.
Ma, will you stay in your room?
No, I will not stay in my room. Tell your master I have gone to my flat.
Where's that woman gone?
I don't know, Mama.
This is why I came. They said she's controlling my son. She has used her witchcraft to hold him. I heard her father came from a family of lazy beggars and umunachi until he got a job as a tax collector and stole from hard-working people. Now he has opened many businesses and is walking around in Lagos and answering a big man. Her mother is no better. What woman brings another person to breastfeed her own child when she herself is alive and well? Is that normal, Amala?
No, Mama.
I heard all the time she was growing up, it was servants who wiped her ike when she finished shitting. These girls, they go to university and follow men around until their bodies are useless. Nobody knows if she can even have children. Do you know? Does anybody know?
No. Mama.
Does anyone? Ugwu? I will not let this witch control him. She will not succeed. I will consult the dibia.
I knew many stories of people who had used medicine, from the dibia, the childless first wife who tied up the second wife's womb, the woman who made a neighbor's prosperous son go mad, and the man who killed his brother because of a land quarrel. I thought perhaps Master's mother would tie up Olanna's womb or cripple her or kill her. I hurried out through the back door before she said anything. I had to tell Master. I had to tell him at once.
It's the truth. She didn't breastfeed us. If it wasn't for Auntie Feka, we'd be a mess.
That's not the point.
Look, it's not as if you're going to leave him over this. Is it?
Open the door, Olanna.
He's here.
If you're upset with him, tell him. Don't let him talk his way out of it. You always let him talk his way out of things.
I have to go. My heart was racing. I knew what Kainene said was true.
Ugwu told me what happened. I'm so sorry my mother acted that way. You should have ignored her, really. I've decided to talk to Dr. Okoh about the labor strike. It's unacceptable that the Prime Minister and his cronies should completely reject their demands. We have to show support.
Your mother made a scene.
My mother doesn't know what she's doing. She's just a village woman. She's trying to make her way in a new world with skills that are better suited
He looked
to
around the
old one.
flat, distracted.
I don't know why you still have this place.
I had it because I feared living with him completely. He'd asked me several times to marry him, but I thought marriage would destroy the relationship. Rice, why is your mother's behaviour acceptable because she's a village woman? I know village women who do not behave this way.
Olanna, my mother's entire life is in Aba. Do you know what a small bush village that is? Of course she'll feel threatened by an educated woman living with her son. Of course you have to be a witch. The real tragedy of our post-colonial world is not that the majority of people had no say in whether or not they wanted this new world. Rather, it is that the majority have not been given the tools to negotiate it.
Did you talk to her about this?
I didn't see the point. Look, I want to catch Dr. Okoh at the club. Let's discuss this when I get back. I'll stay here tonight.
I felt childish, as if I failed him for letting his mother affect me. But I wanted him to ask me to come back with him to the house. Wanted him to say he would tell his mother off in front of her. But he was deciding to stay at my flat, like a frightened little boy hiding from his mother. No.
What?
I said no. I'd like you to leave.
It was only after Master's mother and Amala left that Ma returned to the house. I brought her some water to drink that evening, intending to apologize.
Thank you, Ugwu.
Somehow, I felt responsible for Mama's behavior. I
I saw a black cat yesterday.
A black cat?
Yes, ma. Near the garage. A black cat means evil.
I see.
Mama said she will go to the dibia in the village.
You think the dibia has sent the black cat to bite us?
No, ma. It happened in my village. A junior wife went to the dibia and got medicine to kill the senior wife. And the night before the senior wife died, a black cat came to the front of our hut.
So Mama will use the dibia's medicine and kill me?
She wants to divide you and Master, ma.
I'm sure it was just the neighbor's cat, Ugwu. Your master's mother can't use any medicine to divide us. I watched Ugwu head back to the kitchen. I was touched by his solemnness. Of course, Odenigbo's mother's medicine from the dibia, indeed all supernatural fetishes, meant nothing to me. I believed in our love. But I worried about my future with Odenigbo. I didn't want to marry him, but I longed for security. I longed for a sign, a rainbow or something to signify security. I longed for his child. It was morning. We had just finished making love.
Let's have a child. If you won't marry me, let's have a child.
I looked at him as if I hadn't heard him properly. I had wanted to wait some time for the scent of his mother's visit to diffuse before telling him I wanted a child, and here he was, voicing my desire.
Let's have a child. A little girl just like you, and we'll call her Obianuju, because she will complete us.
Or a little boy.
Yes. Yes. A boy. Let's have Ugwu bring us breakfast in bed. Or is this one of your Sundays of faith?
I won't go today.
Good. Because we have work to do.
But I knew there would not be a child, no matter how much my lungs urged conception on, or no matter how many times we tried. Because I knew there was something wrong with my body.
I do not want my book to focus on personal matters, although there is one incident that might be of interest. It concerns the indiscretion that occurred between Odenigbo and AMALA the second time his mother came to stay, and Olanna was in London. This is because it has been suggested that bad medicine was involved. This incident could possibly be the preamble to a chapter on how traditional beliefs contributed to the resistance of British rule. Most likely, Chapter 3 will focus on the economy in the early 60s, how there was newly discovered oil in places like Kanu, Port Harcourt, and Nsukka, how the new leaders were too ambitious with development loans that would win their people's credibility, too naive in accepting exploitative foreign loans, too keen to ape the British. These problems would culminate in this series of crises which happened in the late 60s.
Ma was in the kitchen preparing baby porridge when it happened. Baby was 4 years old. Good evening, Ma.
Oh, oh, I didn't hear you come in. No. Are your people well?
Yes, Ma. They send their greetings. My mother said she cannot thank you enough for the wrappers.
Oh, baby's in the bedroom. She will want to greet you. Oh, it's good that you're back. We've missed you.
Oh, thank you, Ma.
Well, your master and I have decided that Arize should come here to have her baby in September.
I liked Auntie Arize. She was Ma's cousin. Arize's mother, Auntie Ifeka,
had been Ma and her sister's wet nurse. Well, I hope the baby will resemble Auntie Arize and not Uncle Nna Kwanze.
I hope so too. We will start cleaning the room in time. I want it to be spotless for her.
It will be spotless, Ma. Don't worry.
Oh my God.
Ma ran to the living room. I followed her.
There's been a coup. Major Nzogu is speaking from Kaduna.
The Revolutionary Council is to establish a nation free from corruption and internal strife. Our enemies are the political profiteers.
Ma ran to the telephone and dialed.
What's happening in Lagos? Operator? Operator, it isn't going through.
Your parents are fine. Civilians are safe.
He took the phone from her.
Ugwu, bring baby.
Yes, sir.
I assure all foreigners that their rights will continue to be respected. We promise every law-abiding citizen the freedom from all forms of oppression, freedom from general inefficiency, and freedom to live and strive in every field of human endeavor. We promise that you will no more be ashamed to say that you are a Nigerian.
This is the end of corruption.
This is what we've needed to happen since that general strike.
Your American friend is right,
OKEOMA, Miss Adebayo, and others would visit frequently to discuss the events.
Those majors are true heroes.
Every day, there was another announcement.
Has gone missing. He was last seen.
Nigeria is now a federal and military government. Areas of the north and west are now missing. Major Nzogu has reported that the Sardana.
They say the Sardana hid behind his wife when he was killed.
They said he bleated like a goat.
It was clear from the start that the Sardana hated the Igbos. He refused to allow them to go to school in the north.
I missed that Mr. Richard no longer came. His last visit was around the time baby was born. It was the same time Ma and her sister stopped speaking.
They say that the finance minister shit in his pants before they shot him.
Okay. I knew the finance minister, Chief Okonji. He was a friend of my father.
The BBC is calling it an Igbo coup because it was mostly northerners who were killed.
The BBC should be asking their people who put the northerners in government to dominate everybody. If we had more men like Major Nzogu in this country, we would not be where we are today. He actually has a vision.
Isn't he a communist?
You Americans always peering under people's beds to look for communism. Do you think we have time to worry about that? What matters is whatever will make our people move forward.
I saw that Olanna's head was supported by her clasped hands, and I wish I could truly feel sorry for her friend, the politician, who had been killed. But I didn't.
The party was already underway when Kainene and I arrived at her parents' house. Chief Azobia and Kainene's mother had fled after the coup and had returned once things had calmed down. So many big men from the new regime. There were garish balloons in the living room, and stewards in black and white walked around with trays.
Daddy hasn't wasted any time ingratiating himself.
I saw Colonel Madu right away, and my heart sank. He was talking to an Arab man in a tight dinner jacket. He came over. Madu, ano amekwa? I had been practicing with Ikejide, Kainene's houseboy. I wanted to speak first in Igbo, now that I was fluent.
Nothing to complain about.
He replied in English.
Who was the man you were speaking to, Madu?
No one of importance. He wanted to buy your father's warehouse in Ikeja. But your father won't be selling anything to him. Those Syrians and Lebanese already own half of Lagos. They are all bloody opportunists in this country.
I would sell to him if he stopped smelling so awfully of garlic. Richard thinks another coup is coming.
There won't be another coup.
You would know, wouldn't you, Colonel Madu? Big man that you are in the new regime.
I went to Zaria last week. Lots of people are saying that there are incidents in the north where Igbos are being rounded up and beaten by the northerners. Many have had to deny their tribe to escape. Even Radio Kaduna and the New Nigerian said...
Really?
But the papers ran articles about jihad, and Radio Kaduna kept broadcasting the late Sardona's speeches. And there was talk about how Igbo people were going to take over the civil service.
My friend, there won't be another coup. There is a little tension in the army, but there's always a little tension in the army. Did you have the goat meat? Isn't it wonderful?
The second coup happened exactly a week later.
Kainene, I just heard.
She was in the living room. My first reaction was to gloat. I was right. Madu was wrong.
Northern officers have taken over. The BBC says they are killing Igbo officers in Kaduna. Nigerian radio isn't saying anything. Madu is in Kaduna.
She put her face in her hands. For the first time, I considered the possibility of Madu's death. It's all right, my darling. It's all right. Kainene contacted everyone she knew to find out what had happened.
Operator, I want to speak to Chief Ozobia. Put me through now.
Nobody knew. Madu's wife had heard nothing. Lagos was in chaos.
The killings were organised.
She said, after one such call.
Apparently a soldier said that the alarm for a battalion muster parade was sounded in his barracks, and after everyone assembled, the Northerners picked out all the Igbo soldiers and took them away and shot them. They're saying that no Igbo officer in the north escaped.
We have confirmed reports that up to 500 Igbo people have been killed in Nigeria.
Did you hear that? Rubbish!
Yes, sir. We were listening to EMBC Radio Enugu.
People killed, it can't be true.
Church in Sokoto being set on fire. It started in Kano.
Ma was in Kano. She had gone to bring back Auntie Arize so she could have her baby here in Unsuka.
If you have tea and bread to
Go.
spare, please take it.
Go now. Take them tea and bread.
Yes, sir. Hawkers walked around with trays on their heads. Flies buzzed everywhere. Mats and dirty wrappers were spread all over the platform, and people were crumpled down on them. Men and women and children were crying and eating bread and tending wounds. I approached the nearest person. Do you want some bread?
Yes. My brother, Dalo.
I did not look to see how deep the knife wound on his head was. I poured the tea and held out the bread. I turned to the next man. Choro bread. When I turned, I almost recoiled and dropped the flask. The man's right eye was gone. In its place, a red paw.
Was the soldier who saved us?
It was the first man I had given tea and bread to who was speaking.
They told us to run to the army barracks. Those mad men were chasing us like runaway goats. But once we entered the barracks, we were safe.
The train coming in was so full that some people held on to the outside of the coaches, clutching at metal bars. I watched the dusty people climb down until it emptied out, hoping that Ma would be among them. She was not.
I shouldn't have left them. I had left the compound for just a few hours to visit my old friend Mohammed. I'd left them to drink chilled rice milk and to talk about old times when the Muslims began rioting. This can't be happening. Mohammed slowed down and honked his horn in solidarity. I was wearing a scarf to cover my head. The rioters waved us through. They smelt burning.
Is this the street?
Yes, but I didn't recognize it.
Stay here.
He stopped the car outside Uncle Mbiazi's compound and ran out. The compound gate was broken. I noticed Auntie Ifeka's kiosk, or what remained of it. Splinters of wood, packets of granite lying in the dust. Smoke billowed from the house. I started to run toward the house. I stopped. Uncle Mbiazi lay face down in an ungainly twist. Legs splayed. Something creamy white oozed through the large gash on the back of his head. Auntie Ifeka lay on the veranda. The cuts on her naked body were smaller, dotting her arms and legs like slightly parted red lips. I felt a watery queasiness in my bowels.
Olanna, we have to go.
Mohammed was dragging me, pulling me back to the car.
Arise, she's due any time now. I can't leave without her.
A crowd of men drifted into the yard carrying axes and machetes. Their blood-stained kaftans flapped around their legs.
Keep your face down. Keep your face down.
I did as he said. He spoke in Hausa. He nudged a body on the ground with his foot. It was then that I noticed how many bodies were lying there, like dolls made of cloth.
Allah does not allow this.
Mohammed was shaking as he drove past policemen in blood-splattered uniforms, past boys carrying looted radios, until he parked at the train station and shoved me onto a crowded train. For the entire journey, I sat on the floor next to a woman who held a big bowl, a calabash. The woman's wrapper was dotted with splotchy stains that looked like blood. When we crossed the River Niger, someone shouted, "Anye agafela." A liquid, urine, was spreading on the floor of the train. I felt it soaking into my dress. The woman with the calabash nudged me.
Piano. Come, take a look.
She opened the calabash.
Piano.
I looked and saw the little girl's head with the ashy grey skin and the plaited hair and the rolled back eyes and open mouth.
Do you know, it took me so long to plait this hair. She has such thick hair.
Madhu? Madhu? Oh, is this you? Oh,
Madhu appeared 2 weeks later.
Oh, thank goodness.
He'd lost weight. They held each other close, and with such tenderness that I had to look away.
Would anyone like a drink?
Yes, Richard. Thank you.
I poured a whiskey for Madhu and a gin for myself.
Thank you.
But he did not take it.
What? They said they shot you in Kaduna.
You remember my friend Ibrahim from Sandhurst?
Yes.
He saved my life. He told me about the coup that morning. He was not directly involved, but most of them, the northern officers, they knew about it. He drove me to his cousin's house, but I didn't really understand until he asked his cousin to take me to the backyard, where he kept the domestic animals. I slept in the chicken house.
No, Charlie.
The soldiers, they came to search his cousin's house to look for me. Everyone knew how close Ibrahim and I were, but they didn't check the chicken house. I did not know how bad chicken shit smelled until I slept in it for 3 days. Ibrahim sent me some kaftans and money through a small boy. I dressed as a Fulani nomad and walked through many villages until I found a lorry driver, an Igbo man, who took me to Kafansha. My cousin lives there. You know Onunko, don't you? He is the station master at the railway. He told me that northern soldiers had sealed off Makodi Bridge. That bridge is a grave. Many of the soldiers were in disguises, but they used their boots to find them.
What?
Boots. You know, we soldiers, we wear boots all the time. So they examined the feet of each man, and any Igbo man whose feet were clean and uncracked by Hamatan, they took away and shot. Eventually, I found a man, a good man from Nnewi, and he hid me in the water tank of his goods train. The man gave me a fireman's suit to wear, and I climbed into the tank. I had water up to my chin. When we got to the bridge, the soldiers searched the train, but they did not open the water tank. Igbo soldiers and northern soldiers can never live in the same barracks after this. And Gawan cannot be head of state.
What are you going to do now?
Madhu didn't seem to have heard her.
So many of us are gone. So many good men. And those men who believed in Nigeria and didn't care for tribe. The problem was the ethnic balance policy. I was part of the commission that told our GOC that we should scrap it, that it was polarizing the army, that they should stop promoting Northerners who were not qualified.
He was looking directly at me.
But our GOC said no. Our British GOC.
I was told that it was Baby who found me lying on the ground outside our house in Nsukka. I was unable to walk. I was told by the doctors that it was psychological. I lay in bed for weeks as friends and relatives came to say "Undo" and to shake their heads and mutter about the evils of those Muslim Hausa people, those black as he-goats northerners, those dirty cattle rearers with jigger-infested feet. Kainene did not come, but I did not expect her to. I knew she would never forgive me after what happened between me and Richard, after I'd learned about Odenigbo sleeping with AMALA. When Odenigbo's friends came, I would listen from my bed with the bedroom door open as they talked.
I am saying that our students should stop making noise. Asking David to report does not make sense. Give the man a chance and peace will come.
The High Commissioner thinks we are all mental children, Mr. ADEBAYO. The man should go home. Why is he coming to tell us how to put up the fire when it is he and his fellow British who collected the firewood for it in the first
During one particular heated conversation, I had the need to go to the toilet. I pressed the bell that Odenigbo had installed for such occasions. It didn't work. I stood up and placed one foot forwards, then the other. There was a tight pressure around my ankles. I took a few steps and I walked.
Some British acquaintances at the polo club said, with the Igbos being so clannish and uppity and controlling the markets, the Igbo had it coming. They said the Igbos were very uncivilized compared to the Yoruba, who had contact with Europeans on the coast for years. Even the clippings from the Herald and Time magazine my aunt sent me from England sounded hollow. They said that ancient tribal hatreds was the reason for the massacre.
What do you think?
I'd written an article in response, and I desperately wanted her to approve.
How do you feel about it?
Since the death of her relatives, Kainene had become distant. She'd put up pictures of them. Arize laughing in her wedding dress. Uncle Umbazi and Auntie Ifaka standing beside her. But had said very little about them.
I think it sounds exceedingly formal and stuffy. But what I feel about it is pride. I feel pride.
It was about the refugee problem. The result of the massacres. I sent it off. It was rejected by the Herald 2 weeks later. They said the press was saturated with stories of violence from Africa, and this one was particularly bland. But perhaps I could do a piece on the human angle. Did they mutter any tribal incantations while they did the killings, for example? Did they eat body parts like they did in the Congo? Was there a way of trying to understand the minds of these people? I put the article away. It frightened me that I could sleep well at night, that I was still calmed by the scent of orange leaves, that I was sentient. I realized it was because I knew I was safe. I hadn't ever once feared for my life.
Fellow countrymen and women, you the people of Eastern Nigeria, conscious of the supreme authority of Almighty God over all mankind, of your duty over posterity, aware that you can no longer be protected in your lives and in your property by any government based outside Eastern Nigeria, determined to dissolve all political and other ties between you and the former Republic of Nigeria.
The day succession was announced, Kainene and I stood on the veranda and listened to Ojukwu's voice on the radio. We drank champagne.
On the day of secession, we attended a rally. We stood in Freedom Square in the center of the campus, lecturers and students shouting and singing, placards held high. Baby sat on Odenigbo's shoulders, waving her stuffed doll.
I stood beside them.
I believed it was a new start. A new country, their new country.
My placard read, "We cannot die like dogs."
My placard read, "God bless Biafra."
It was a new start not only because succession was just, considering all that the Igbo had endured, but because of the possibility Biafra held for me. I believed I would be a Biafran in a way I could never have been a Nigerian. I was there at the beginning. I had shared in its birth.
It's wrong, Ugwu. So wrong. But His Excellency has handled it all well.
We had just heard that some northerners in Onitsha had been killed in reprisal attacks.
God knows how many would have been killed if he did not have the northern soldiers sent back to the north.
Ojukwu is a great man.
Yes, he is. But we are all capable of doing the same things to one another, really.
No, ma. We are not like those Hausa people. The reprisal killings are happening because they pushed us. No one has spoken out against the killing of Igbo people in the north. Not the Yoruba, not the British. I was repeating the contents of Master's argument with Miss ADEBAYO, recalling how he had accused her of being unsympathetic because she was standing by as her Yoruba people killed the Igbos in Lagos.
Your master was wrong to speak to Miss ADEBAYO like that, Ugwu. She's his friend. Oh, this soup is not thickening at all. What is that?
She pulled baby to her.
Odenigbo?
Olanna, get a few things together. I'll check the water in the car. Ugwu, lock up, quick.
What things? What will I take?
Just take a few things, clothes.
He grabbed the car keys from the shelf.
Put it in the car.
I wrapped the pot of soup in a dishcloth and took it out to the car.
I ran around throwing things into the bags. Baby's clothes and toys, biscuits, Master's clothes, Olanna's wrappers and dresses. I didn't know what else to take. I grabbed the photo albums and ran out to the car. At the gates, Biafran soldiers were waving cars through. They looked distinguished in their khaki uniforms, boots shining, half of a yellow sun sewn on their sleeves.
I could not believe that Nsukka had fallen, that we had been attacked.
The main road was crowded, women with boxes on their heads and babies tied to their backs. Barefoot children carrying bundles of clothes or yam or boxes, men dragging bicycles.
People were saying that Nsukka had fallen because of the oil. They were saying that Gowon would not let secession happen without a fight. The villagers of Aba had made us feel so welcome that I felt a warmth for them that even extended to Odenigbo's mother. I even allowed Mama to visit Baby, even though her affection for Baby had always been half-baked. Odenigbo had not fulfilled her wish and given her a son. I watched Odenigbo get dressed for the meeting. Mama says the Dibia Nwafo Agbada is going to reassure you of Abba's strength, that Abba isn't going to fall. I wonder how steep the fines are. He shrugged.
Will you come?
But I'm not from Abba.
You could be if you married me. You should be.
We're fine as we are.
We are at war. And my mother would have to decide what will be done with my body if anything happened to me. You should decide that.
Stop it. Stop it. Nothing will happen to you.
Of course, nothing will happen to me. I just want you to marry me. We really should marry. We survived the business with AMALA. You forgave me. It no longer makes sense. It never made sense.
I knew he was right. It had made sense to me not to marry to preserve what we had.
Olanna.
But things were different now that Arize, Auntie Ifeka, and Uncle Mbazi were dead. Now that I was raising another woman's child. Now that bullets were falling in Nsukka. You have to take wine to my father then.
Is that a yes?
Yes. It is a yes.
When Abba fell, we left for Umahia. It was the only place Odenigbo could find work. He was to work for the Research and Production Directorate. Mama refused to come with us. Because we knew an indigene of Umahia, we managed to get a place with 2 bedrooms and kitchen and living room and dining room.
We had to share the bathroom, which was a pit latrine with a rusting zinc sheet drawn across it to keep the flies out. Friends began to stop by as the weeks passed. They were not OKEOMA or Miss ADEBAYO, and I no longer served them pepper soup or drinks. But every day I would sit on the veranda and listen to them talk.
They would talk about how we launched our first Biafran rocket.
They praised Biafra when our soldiers marched into Lagos, having captured the Midwest.
They admired our resilience in the face of the arms Harold Wilson gave to the Muslims.
They blamed Russia.
And Britain.
How was your day? Did you spend it worrying about your manuscript?
Of course not. But I knew she knew it was a lie. I'd been unable to retrieve my 3rd manuscript, entitled In the Time of Roped Pots, when they'd evacuated Nsukka.
There was another rally in town today. At least 1,000 people walking and many cars covered in green leaves. I wish they would stick to the fields instead of blocking major roads. I've already donated money and I won't be held up to further Ojukwu's ambition.
It's about a cause, Kainene, not a man.
Yes, the cause of benign extortion.
Oh, rubbish.
You know that taxi drivers no longer charge soldiers. They get offended when soldiers offer to pay the fare. Madhu says
a lot of things.
Madhu says there is a group of village women at the barracks every day bringing yams and plantains and fruits to the soldiers. These are people who have nothing themselves.
It's not extortion. It's the cause.
Madhu told me today that the army has nothing. Absolutely nothing. They thought Ojukwu had arms piled up somewhere, given the way he's been talking. No power in Black Africa can defeat us. So Madhu and some officers who came back from the north went to tell him that we have no arms, no mobilisation of troops, and that our men are training with wooden guns. They wanted him to release his stockpiled arms, but he turned around and said that they were plotting to overthrow him. Apparently he has no arms at all and plans to defeat Nigeria with his fists.
The wedding was simple. It was at St. Sebastian Catholic Church. There were no flowers. There were only a few guests. I missed Kainene.
I did not think the surroundings were worthy of Ma, and I could see that she was unhappy. But OKEOMA's arrival raised her spirits.
The voice of our generation.
Odenigbo, my friend, eh?
The untidy hair and rumpled shirt of the poet was gone. He was in smart-fitting army uniform, and the sleeve had a skull and bones image next to the half of a yellow sun.
After the ceremony, I watched them dance, body to body. In her high heels, Ma was taller than Master. She was smiling and glowing and laughing. I felt responsible for Ma's happiness. I thought they belonged to me. It was like a seal of stability. Their wedding, because as long as they were married, my world with them was safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to make a toast. I have known this man, Odenigbo, for more than 10 years. True. And there have been women. But, not one who has captured his attention and heart so completely and so utterly more than the beautiful, exquisite Olanna.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, I have written a poem.
Oh. A poem?
Of course, now. What else did you
my
expect?
Friend.
Yes, now. Brown, with the fish glow sheen of a mermaid, she appears bearing silver dawn. And the sun
Watching
attends
OKEOMA,
her,
I was reminded of those
the
days.
mermaid who will never be mine.
All those years ago. Back in Nsukka, Ma's eyes were tearful as the photographer prepared to take the photographs.
Wait. Don't take it yet. Sorry.
Ready?
She wiped her eyes.
Yes.
It was then that I heard it.
Outside! Run! Run! Outside!
We ran.
Quickly, run! Outside!
Master was shouting, but some ran into the bedrooms.
I held on to baby as we ran into a cassava patch and lay on our bellies. A woman from the opposite house tugged at my dress.
Remove that white dress. They will see it and take it off. Take it off. Okay.
I took it off.
Now.
Master covered baby's mouth as if the pilot might hear her. I felt the warm wetness of urine on my shorts and was convinced that the bombs would never end. They would continue to fall until everything was destroyed and everyone died.
In Half of a Yellow Sun, narrator was played by Ben Onwukwe, OKEOMA by Sule Rimi, Odenigbo by Adetomiwa Edun, Ugwu by Valentine Olukoga. Miss ADEBAYO and Mama were played by Gbemisola Ikumelo, Olanna by Susan Wokoma, Richard by Blake Ritson, Kainene by Nikki Amuka Bird, Madu by Okezie Moro. Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, dramatized by Janice Okoh, was a BBC audio drama North production directed by Nadia Molinari. Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, dramatized by Janice Okoh. Perhaps I shall include one small personal anecdote. I shall dedicate a section to the interesting story of how the title of my book, The World Was Silent When We Died, came into existence. It will start with a manuscript entitled The Basket of Hands Going Up in Flames, how the writer felt a sore in his chest of emotions he could not name at the knowledge that the unbridled energy of his words could never be duplicated. The paragraphs will end with the poignant musing of whether the following statement is true. For true writers, nothing is more important than their art, not even love.
I jumped every time I heard the planes. I imagined another air raid. Imagined baby, Ugwu, Odenigbo and I not being able to reach the bunker down the street. Odenigbo and some neighborhood men had built it in a week. The pit was wide as a hall and they roofed it with clay-layered palm trunks.
We will get our life back soon, in a free Biafra.
His calmness bewildered me. I worried when Biafra followed Nigeria's lead and introduced a new currency and realized I could no longer access my money. I worried when the directorate delayed Odenigbo's salary. I worried how expensive food was becoming, and I worried when baby fell ill. The antibiotics we found cleared up her cough, but they turned the whites of her eyes yellow, and her appetite disappeared.
Will you eat some pap, my baby?
No, Mommy Ola.
Please, eat something. I was trying to cajole baby into drinking some Ovaltine when Mrs. Mwakelu, one of the teachers I worked with at the primary school, arrived.
They have opened a relief center on Bishop's Road. Ugwu, bring me a bowl.
Yes, ma.
She poured some yellow powder into the bowl Ugwu brought.
What is that? Dried egg yolk. Fry it for baby.
Fry it?
Mix it with some water and fry it. Say so. They say children love the
dried
taste
egg
of
yolk
this
fried in the red palm oil looked soggy and unnervingly bright-coloured on the plate. Baby ate all of it. After that, I went to the relief centre every day. Militiamen flogged us with long whips to keep us in check. I felt blemished queuing for food. I was giving baby an evening bath when I heard the voices. I grabbed her and ran from the outhouse and headed for the bunker. Odenigbo held the zinc sheet open while we all climbed in. I saw that Ugwu was still clutching a spoon smeared with soup. We waited.
The sirens went off regularly after that. Either Ma or I would pick up baby and run to the bunker. They targeted the primary school. The roof was crushed and all the windows were blown out, but the walls stood still.
But I still taught.
She taught them about the Biafran flag, what the symbols meant.
I taught them that red was the blood of the siblings massacred in the north. Black was for mourning them. Green was for the prosperity Biafra would have. And finally, the half of a yellow sun stood for our glorious future.
The Red Cross people remembered our directorate today.
Master pointed at the small carton he had brought back. Ma opened it. The Red Cross irritated me. I did not understand why they didn't ask Biafrans their preferred food, rather than sending so much bland flour.
Odenigbo, you must thank them for us.
This will be over soon, and we'll have a free Biafra.
Master would say this a lot. He had joined the agitator corps, and after work, they went into the interior to educate the people. He saw the future. But with the recent fall of Enugu, I found it hard to imagine.
More refugees came into Umahia. Women knocked on the door often to ask if there was any work they could do in exchange for food. They came with their thin, naked children. Sometimes I gave them gari soaked in cold water before telling them I had no work.
Ma, perhaps I should go to the relief center.
Why? Or do you want to get conscripted?
Stories of forced conscription were everywhere. But I knew if I went to queue for food at the relief center, I would not wait my turn like Ma until everything was gone.
Ugwu, the primary school is going to be turned into a refugee camp. I am going to organize classes here in the yard.
With Miss Mwakelu?
Yes. And you. You will teach a class.
Me, Ma?
Yes. You are always reading. You do not need more qualification than that.
A teacher.
We will teach mathematics, English, and civics every day. We will teach them to speak perfect English and perfect Igbo, like His Excellency. We will teach them pride.
I was to teach the youngest pupils. I wanted to learn all I could from her and to excel at teaching, to show her I could do it.
Enunciate. The word has
At the end of the second week, after the children had left, Miss Mwakelu came into our living room.
I am going to start a fee attack and see if I can buy salt. I can no longer teach.
No! Why?
I have 12 people to feed. And that's not counting my husband's relatives who have just come back from Abakaliki. My husband has returned from the war front with one leg. What can he do?
I understand, but must you join them in buying from enemy territory?
What is there to buy in Biafra? They have blockaded us, pam-pam.
But how will you go?
There is a woman I know. She supplies Gary to the army. So they gave her lorry a military escort. The lorry will take us to Ufuma, and there we will walk across to the border in Ukwere Inyi.
Please be careful, sister.
Many are doing it, and nothing has happened to them.
I took over her class the next day. I loved the light of recognition in the older children's eyes when I explained the meaning of a word to someone. Dictatorship is a government characterized by a single leader or a group. I loved it when Master said to a neighbor,
"My wife and Ugwu are changing the face of the next generation of Biafrans with the Socratic..."
And I loved most of all the teasing way Eberechi called me teacher. Eberechi, with her large eyes, rash of pimples on her forehead and hair plaited in thread-covered spikes. Her perfectly rounded buttocks which rolled rhythmically from side to side in her tight skirts always distracted me as she walked by. Nebo said that her parents had given her to a visiting army officer, as one would hand out kola nuts to a guest. I wondered who was to blame more, her parents or the officer. She would stand by her house and watch me teach. I would raise my voice and pronounce my words more carefully when I saw her watching me.
Enunciate, enunciate. The word has no R.
She began to come over after classes. She would sit in the backyard with me or play with baby or watch me weed the vegetable patch.
Hey, baby, look at
I
you.
sneaked into Ma's room and poured some scented talcum powder in a folded piece of paper and gave it to her.
What is this, teacher?
She sniffed it, dabbed a little on her neck.
I did not ask you for powder.
For the first time, I felt comfortable in her presence.
He was sitting there on the bed.
I listened to her tell me about
was
her
naked.
parents pushing her into the army
He had a
officer's
big
room,
belly.
as if I had not heard it
He
before.
did it quickly and then told me to lie on top of him. He fell asleep and I wanted to move away and he woke up and told me to stay there. I could not sleep, so the whole night I looked at the saliva coming down from his mouth. He helped us. He put my brother
I
in
felt
essential
angry
services
that she
in
had
the
gone through what she had, and angry with myself because, having imagined her naked, the story had aroused me. Eberechi, wake up.
Teacher, have you finished for today?
I found her asleep on a mat in the shade of our veranda. She smiled when she saw me. You heard that Tanzania has recognized Biafra?
Yes. Yes.
Of course, many other countries want to recognize us, but they won't because of America. America is the stumbling block. Of course, Britain is to blame. I had repeated word for word what Master had said to Ma when we had heard the news on the radio.
Yes. We got double good news today. My auntie is now the provincial representative of Caritas. She said she would give me a job at the relief center in St. John's. It means I will get extra
She
stockfish.
reached out and playfully pinched the skin of my neck. I looked at her. Not only did I want to squeeze her naked buttocks, but I wanted to wake up next to her every day.
Go.
I realized I loved her. A Peugeot 403 suddenly sped across the street. Biafran Army was roughly handwritten on it in red paint. A soldier climbed out, holding a gun, wearing uniform so smart that the lines of ironing were visible down the front.
Good afternoon.
Are you Eberechi?
Yes. Is it about my brother? Has something happened to him?
Huh? No. Major Mbogu's calling you. He's at the bar down the road.
Oh, I'm coming. I'm coming.
She turned and ran indoors. I felt betrayed by her excitement. When she returned, her face wore a thin coat of white powder. Her eyebrows were darkened. Her lips a red gash.
Let's go.
She bent and whispered to me.
If they look for me, please say I went to get something from Ngozi's house. Okay, Mr. Teacher. See you.
I could not bear to watch them go. I felt hot and confused. I could not believe she had just asked me to lie for her while she ran off to see a man she had never mentioned to me. It was dark when she knocked on the back door. I did not say anything as I let her in.
Do you know they have renamed the Rising Sun Bar? It's now called Tanzania Bar. People were playing Tanzania music and dancing, and one businessman came and ordered chicken and beer for everybody.
My jealousy was visceral. It clutched at my throat and tried to strangle me.
Where is Auntie Olanna?
She is reading with baby. I wanted to shake her until she told me the truth. Why the lipstick was gone from her lips.
Is there some water? I am thirsty. I drank beer today.
I poured her some.
I met the Major some weeks ago. He gave me a lift when I went to Olu, but I did not think he would even remember me. He's such a nice man. I told him you are my brother. He said he will make sure nobody comes here to conscript.
She looked proud of what she had accomplished. I have to clean up. She drank another cup of water.
Now, Guano, let the day break.
I stopped going over to her house and ignored her greetings.
Ugwu, sit down, please. I want to tell you something.
Ma was in the living room with baby. Her eyes hollow, depthless. Ma, did something happen?
Master's mother is dead. His cousin sent a message. They shot her in Aba.
I placed my hand on my head and struggled to remember what Mama had looked like last time I saw her. But I could not visualize her. Instead, I recalled a blurred image of her in the kitchen in Nsukka, opening a pot of peppercorns, my eyes filled with tears. When Master came home, I approached him. My madam told me what happened, sir. Ndo.
Yes. Yes.
He continued on to the outhouse. He had barely glanced at me. I made a fire in the backyard and began making baby's dinner. Ma came out, sat down on a cement block.
He won't talk to me either.
I sat down next to her. I wanted to place a hand on her back to comfort her, but felt unable to.
When Harrison, my houseboy, arrived at the house in Port Harcourt, he told me his hometown was falling. I told him he could stay, seeing as two of Kainene's stewards had gone off to join the army, and only Ikejide was left.
Did he bring your manuscript?
Kainene asked over dinner.
No. He said he buried it.
I'd been unable to retrieve it from my house when Nsukka fell. I'd lost my second manuscript, A Basket of Hands, when Kainene had set it alight 4 years earlier.
Oh, yes. Madhu said he would like you to write for the propaganda directorate.
Why? The man hates me.
Don't be so melodramatic. I think they want experienced insiders to do stories that are about more than just the number of Biafran dead. They'll get your special pass and petrol supply so you can move around. They'll send your pieces
At
to
first,
our
the word insider thrilled me, until I realized that insider had been Kainene's word, and not Madhu's. It was clear Madhu saw me as a foreigner when he explained.
They will take what you write more seriously because you are white. Look, the truth is, this is not your war. This is not your cause. Your government will evacuate you in a minute if you ask them to. So it's not enough to carry limp branches and shout power to show that you support Biafra. If you really want to contribute, this is the way you can. The world has to know the truth of what is happening because they simply cannot remain silent while we die. They will believe a white man who lives in Biafra who is not a professional journalist.
Working as a journalist, I felt part of things. I found pleasure in the new respect in the driver's eye, in how quickly the civil defender's suspicious glances at my special duties pass changed to wide grins when I greeted them in Igbo, in how willing people were to answer my questions, knowing all the while they had no idea what I was talking about.
Unbelievable.
I was in the bedroom writing about the forest markets, how Igbos were trading there. What happened?
Apparently, one of our defenders thought I might be a saboteur. She searched my handbag. If I did have a bomb, I would not hide it in my handbag, I told her. It's such an awful joke, this fear we are whipping up in our people. Bombs in women's bras. Bombs in tins of baby milk. Saboteurs everywhere. Watch your children because they could be working for Nigeria.
It's normal for wartime. It's important for people to be aware that there are saboteurs in our
The
midst.
only saboteurs are the ones Ojukwu invented so he can lock up his opponents and the men whose wives he wants. Did I ever tell you about the Onichi
I thought she
man who
always
bought up all of
sounded
the
like
cement man in the
Madhu
factory
when she
shortly
spoke
after the
about His
refugee stopped
Excellency,
coming back?
whose disdain had
Ojukwu is having
started
an affair
when
with
His
the man's
Excellency
wife
had
and just
bypassed
had the
him
man arrested
and
for
made his
nothing.
junior a commanding officer. I wondered if His Excellency had not bypassed
so
Madhu,
suspicious of his officers that he's
would she
using
be less
civilians
critical?
to buy arms. Madhu said they just bought some miserable bolt-action rifles in Europe. Really? When Biafra is established, we will have to remove Ojukwu.
And replace him with who? Madhu?
I wanted to cry.
I'll ask Ikejide to put a few things in the car. We'll leave the Ford and take the Peugeot.
I was losing the town I had come to love, the town in which I loved. I wished I was as calm as she was, that my hands would not shake.
We need to hurry, Richard. The train sounds close by.
I packed quickly. Kainene returned with Harrison and Ikejide.
Have you seen my papers? My piece about Odenigbo. I thought I'd left them on the table.
We have to get past the main road before they advance, Richard. Ikejide, take the cases to the car.
Yes, ma'am. I ran towards Kainene, but she was already running out of the room.
Go out to the orchard.
We ran, passing Ikejide and Harrison, who by now were crouching under the kitchen table. Outside, I looked up. 2 planes were flying low. Fear spread helplessness throughout my body. Kainene and I lay under the orange trees, silent. Ikejide and Harrison came out of the house. Harrison threw himself flat on the ground while Ikejide kept on running, his body slightly forward, his arms flying around, his head bobbing. I pressed Kainene close to me. A piece of shrapnel the size of a fist whizzed past. Ikejide was still running. And in the moment that I glanced away and back, Ikejide's head was gone.
When our landlord asked us to move, it was because he found someone who would pay him twice the rent. Our only option was a room in a strip of a building with 9 rooms, a shared kitchen, and a shared bathroom. A family of 16 lived in a room next door. There was no electricity. Where we used to live, we had electricity up until 8 p.m. Kainene. She was standing near the banana trees, looking elegant in a knee-length tan dress.
I went to your old house and somebody told me to come here.
Yes, we had to move. Would you like to sit? We sat in the veranda. We did not look at each other. So, how have you been?
Things were normal until Port Harcourt fell. I was an army contractor and I had a license to import stockfish. I'm in Olu now. I'm in charge of a refugee camp there.
Oh. She raised her eyebrows that were pencil thin.
Are you silently condemning me for profiteering from the war? Many contractors were paid and didn't deliver. I did.
No, not at all.
You were?
I was so worried when Port Harcourt fell. I sent messages.
I got your letter you sent to Madhu. I came to give you this. Mum sent it through a British journalist.
She brought an envelope out of her bag. It looked like it contained money. I didn't open it.
And I brought 2 dresses for baby. A woman who came back from Sao Tome had some good children's clothes for sale.
You bought clothes for baby?
How shocking, indeed. And it's about time the girl began to be called Chiamaka. This baby business is tiresome. I thought about changing your money for you, but you can do it at the bank and then deposit, can't you?
Oh, haven't you seen the bomb craters all around the bank? My money is staying under my bed.
Make sure the cockroaches don't get to it. Life is harder for them these days.
Eberechi was sitting on the veranda, alone, wearing that buttocks molding tight skirt I remembered.
Ugwu,
You cut your hair.
is there thread anywhere? Talk less of the money to buy it.
It suits you. She shrugged. I realized that I should never have stopped speaking to her because of an army officer I did not know.
Forgive me, Gagalu.
We looked at each other, and she reached out and pinched the skin of my neck. I slapped her hand away playfully and then held on to it. I did not let go when we sat on the steps. I thought of OKEOMA, how he had attended Master's wedding and read his wonderful poem, The Days in Master's House in Nsukka.
What's wrong?
Master told me that OKEOMA has died.
The poet.
She placed a hand on my shoulder, and I sat very still, as so not to move her hand, so as to keep it where it was. There was a newness to her. Or perhaps it was my perception of things that had become new. I now believed in preciousness. I should go. Before my master comes home, he has gone to Tanzania Bar.
I should come and visit you tomorrow.
The afternoon I first kissed her, baby was asleep. We were playing Biafran War.
Check up.
I leaned closer and tasted the tart dirt behind her ear. Then I kissed her neck, her jaw, her lips. Under the pressure of my tongue, she opened her mouth, and the gushing warmth of it overwhelmed me. My hand moved to her chest and enclosed her small breast. She pushed me away. I lowered it to her belly and kissed her again before quickly slipping my hand under her skirt.
Just let me see. Just see.
She stood up. She did not hold back as she raised her skirt, and I looked at the large rounded lobe of her buttocks. She pulled the underwear back up and let go of her skirt. I wanted to tell her I loved her. I had just finished walking her home when I saw them. 2 soldiers standing next to a van and holding guns.
Stop there!
I began to run. I fell to the ground. I waited for the pain to drill into my body. I was so sure I'd been hit.
Get up!
But there was no pain.
Stand up, you bloody civilian!
I stood up, and the soldier slapped the back of my head. A splintering light spread to my eyes. I walked over to join the 2 men standing with their arms raised high. One was elderly, at least 65, while the other was a teenager.
Get in.
The week baby and I stayed at Kainene's house in Olu. I expected to see Richard, but he wasn't there.
Gone to Gabon to visit the Kwashiorkor Centre. But I think he left early because he felt awkward about seeing you.
I felt relieved. Kainene, when you found out about me and Richard, I told you that it had
Olanna.
nothing to do with you, that it meant nothing. It was cruel. Selfish that I didn't consider your feelings. Why, Richard? I should have never asked for your forgiveness. I had no right. How I behaved was unforgivable.
I burnt his manuscript after he told me. A basket of hands. We've never spoken about it since.
I wanted to smile. I did not expect anything less from my sister. Richard had told me the day we slept together how proud he'd been of that particular manuscript. I knew that I'd said to her that I didn't expect to be forgiven, but I still hoped.
My steward, Ikejide, was killed in Port Harcourt. They were bombing and shelling us, and a piece of shrapnel cut off his head. Completely beheaded him, and his body kept running. His body kept running, and he didn't have a head.
Oh, God.
I saw him. There are some things that are so unforgivable that they make other things forgivable. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I had expected to feel more after I detonated my first Odenigbo. Odenigbo were high-impact landmines. They looked like dull metal containers full of scrap metal.
Yes, targets. Well done.
We waited several minutes before we hauled ourselves out of the trenches and went over to the scattered corpses of the vandals. I bent over a lean body, yanked off his boots. In the pockets, I felt a cold, hard kola nut and warm, thick blood. The second body close by stirred when I touched, and I moved back. There was a forced, gasping breath before it became still. I wiped my bloody hands on my trousers.
Target destroyer.
The skinny soldiers, with no boots, no uniforms, no half of a yellow sun on their sleeves, dumped me on the back. Success hauled me above the ground. I floated through the following days as they drank gin and smoked wee-wee and waited operation.
There is no beer here.
Are you sure? Are you hiding it because you think we'll not pay you?
No, there is no beer.
The bar girl who greeted us was thin and sharp-featured and unsmiling.
She said there is no beer.
His loud manner annoyed me, especially since he had abandoned his Odenigbo and ran off long before the vandals were close.
Let her bring Kai Kai.
The girl set out the local gin and small metal cups.
Once we have won the war, we will hang that...
I took my gin and went outside. There I drank and breathed in the fresh air. It felt like I was sitting in the backyard in Nsukka, looking at the lemon tree and my herb garden. Whatever the soldiers were doing inside did not interest. The soldiers tired me. The war tired me. Eventually, I decided to go back inside. I stopped at the entrance. The bar girl was lying on her back on the floor. Her wrapper hunched up at her waist. Her shoulders held down by a soldier. I backed away from the door.
Target destroyer is afraid.
Who is afraid? I just like to eat before others. That's all.
When the Biafran soldiers killed an Italian oil worker, the Western press couldn't get enough of it. Thousands of Biafrans were dead. I wanted to write an article about it. The rule of Western journalism. 100 dead black people equal 1 dead white person. The world was silent when we died. The title for my book came to me after I'd shown a couple of American journalists the refugee camps. the swollen-bellied children, the death from starvation. Kwashiorkor, it was called. I'd immediately recalled something Madhu had said to me when he'd asked me to report on the war. They cannot remain silent while we die. When I told Kainene about the title of my book, she arched her eyebrows and said,
We?
I'll make sure to note that the Nigerian bombs carefully avoided anyone with a British passport. I loved that sound. She laughed often those days. She laughed as she told me about the motherless baby in the refugee camp who still clung to life. About the women who sang in the evenings. She laughed, too, on the morning that Olanna and I finally saw each other.
I had been coming to Olu regularly since I'd learned that Ugwu had been conscripted. I felt better being around Kainene, hopeful. Madhu had sent word to all battalion commanders to look for him.
Hello, Richard.
Olanna. Hello.
Richard couldn't invent any more trips.
I watched Kainene's face for withdrawal, for returning anger, for something. But there was nothing. And the tension and regret I'd expected with seeing Olanna in her presence were absent.
Hey! Is that you? Oh, it's been so long.
I had seen little of Mrs. Morkelu since she had begun trading across enemy lines.
You look well.
I lied. She looked gaunt, and with so much weight loss, she drooped as though she could no longer stand straight.
I have some soap for you. My mother sent me a package from London.
That was another lie. The package was from my friend, Mohammed in Kanu. I knew Mrs. Morkelu would not accept anything from the north.
Thank you for remembering me. How is Odenigbo? And baby, Ugwu?
They are well. Ugwu was conscripted.
Indo. It will be well. He will come back. Somebody has to fight for our cause. They have started the rumor that Umwa here is threatened.
When I left her house, I saw that there was a sign saying no petrol in the petrol station. So the next day, I changed what was left of my British pounds and bought petrol. I took it home, wrapped in a sack that contained cornmeal. As I stored it in the boot of the Opal, a Biafran army jeep drove in. Kainene climbed out, followed by a soldier wearing a helmet. I knew it was about Ugwu.
Be strong. Ugwu has died.
It was not the news, but the tight grip of Kainene's bony fingers that I recognized.
No.
Madhu received the message. Ugwu was with the field engineers and they suffered massive casualties.
I kept shaking my head, needing to wake up.
Come with me. Bring Chiamaka. Come and stay in Olu.
Instead, I turned and marched down the road to Tanzania Bar. I walked past the dirty curtain and the door and pushed Odenigbo's cup off the table.
Olanna.
Have you drunk enough, eh? Ugwu and Wogo. Did you hear me? Go and drink. Drink and don't stop. Ugwu has died.
When Amahia eventually fell, we packed up our few belongings and went to live with Kainene. It was the first time Odenigbo and Richard had met since I had told Odenigbo about our indiscretion. He was tense. We all were.
We are here until we can find a place to rent.
I thought you might like some. An American journalist gave it to me. It's brandy.
Odenigbo stared at it.
You can have Biafran cherry instead.
No brandy for me, thank you. I should get to bed. I have quite a walk ahead of me now that manpower has moved to the bush.
Later, after I had put baby to bed, I joined Kainene in the dining room.
So you and Odenigbo decided to look for a place. My humble home. It's not good enough.
If he wants to find a place, he can go ahead and live there alone.
What's the matter?
I shook my head. I want this war to end so that he can come back. He has become somebody else.
We are all in the war, and it's up to us to decide to become somebody else or not.
Ever since his mother died, he just drinks and drinks cheap kai-kai. The few times they pay him, the money goes quickly. Can't stand him close to me.
Good.
Good?
Yes, good. There's something very lazy about the way you have loved him blindly for so long without ever criticising him.
There was a small smile on her face.
You've never even accepted that the man is ugly.
It was not what I wanted to hear, but hearing it made me feel better.
So many bodies littered the hospital. On mats, on mattresses, on the bare floor. There was blood everywhere. A priest at the hospital, Father Damien, had told Madu's men that he was here.
Okoh. Okoh. Can you hear me, Okoh? No, don't try to get up.
I could not stop myself from crying when I saw them there in front of me at the hospital. Master and Ma put their arms around me.
Ugwu.
They told us you were dead. Thank God. Oh, thank God.
Baby clung to my hand and refused to let go. I could not sit on one part of my buttocks, and so during the first few weeks in Olu, I lay on my side. Ma was always beside me, forcing me to eat. It surprised me that it was possible for my body to return to what it had been and for my mind to function with permanent lucidity. During the day, I helped out at the refugee camp as baby joined the thin children. Their hair wisps of sun-bleached yellow-brown. In the evenings, I wrote. I sat under the flame tree and wrote in small, careful letters. But my mind wandered often. And I saw the bar, smelled the alcohol, and heard the soldier saying, "Target destroyer." I would see her on the floor. See myself entering her. See her staring at me with a calm hate.
What do you think accounts for the success of the white man's mission in Africa, Richard?
I reached across and took some pieces of the roasted crickets that Harrison had cooked and crunched slowly.
The success?
Odenigbo unnerved me.
Yes, the success.
Well, perhaps you should first account for the failure of the black man to curb the white man's mission.
Who brought racism into the world?
I see your point.
The white man brought racism into the world. He used it as a basis of conquest. It's always easier to conquer a more humane people.
So when we conquer the Nigerians, we will be the less humane?
Still, the evening reminded me of Odenigbo's dimly lit living room in Nsukka, of tasting beer on my pepper-drenched tongue.
My friend has given me some Nigerian coins. You know, these Biafran Organization of Freedom Fighters people have quite a bit of Nigerian money. I want to go to 9th Mile and see what I can buy, and if that goes well, I will sell some of the things our people at the camp have made.
What? That's trading with the enemy.
It's trading with illiterate Nigerian women who have what we need.
It's dangerous, Kainene.
That sector is free. Our people are trading freely there.
Are you going to?
No. At least not tomorrow. Maybe the next time Kainene goes.
Tomorrow?
I was surprised. She had mentioned it once, wanting to trade across enemy lines, but I didn't know she had already decided when to go.
Yes, Kainene is going tomorrow.
Yes, but don't mind Olanna, she will never come with me. She's always been terribly frightened of honest, free enterprise.
Oh. Hasn't 9th Mile Road been occupied on and off? I don't think you should go.
It's all decided. I leave with anatomy early tomorrow morning. We'll be back by evening.
When Kainene did not return, Richard went to look for her.
It was the day they announced His Excellency, Ojukwu, was going abroad in search of peace.
Days passed.
I went with Richard to search for her.
We drove towards 9th Mile Road. I stopped occasionally, asking anyone if they knew anyone who looked like Kainene. I would show them her picture. Nobody had seen her.
We did not reach 9th Mile because the roads were occupied.
Nobody had seen a car like Anatomies.
A week had passed, and Kainene still had not returned.
We were waiting for Odenigbo and Richard to return with news. They had gone looking for her in the hospital in Ahiara.
I was sitting on the bench under the cashew tree writing. Ma was outside, gently combing baby's hair. She was gentle because it had started to come out in thin wisps of sun-bleached yellow-brown.
I keep thinking about the hair on the child's head I saw on the train. It was very thick. Must have been work for her mother to plait it.
How was it plaited? She seemed surprised that I had asked her for such detail.
In small braids. Some of the small braids fell across her. Ugwu was writing as I spoke, and his writing, the earnestness of it, his interest, suddenly made my story seem important, made it serve as a larger purpose. So I told him about the train and the people who had cried and shouted and urinated on themselves.
As she spoke, Master and Mr. Richard came back. They were walking.
What happened to the car? Did the soldiers take it?
The fuel finished on the road. I'll find fuel and go back and get it.
We saw Madhu. He said he is certain she's still on the other side. The vandals must have blocked the way she went in, and she is waiting for a new route to open. It happens all the time.
Yes, of course. I will go.
There's no point.
No point? There is no point in looking for my sister's body.
Your sister's alive. There is no body.
Yes, God.
Even if they shot her, they would not take
I
her
still
to
went to the mortuary.
Inside Biafra.
My note from Madhu made the caretaker smile at me and allow me to look at the faces of every female body, even those that the caretaker said were too old. And afterwards, I stopped on the road to vomit.
We were inside the house. Odenigbo turned on the radio.
Throughout history, injured people had to resort to arms in their self-defense when peaceful negotiations failed.
The voice was unfamiliar. I liked the honesty, the firm vows, the quiet assuredness. I felt dizzy with disbelief. I sat down.
This opportunity to congratulate our armed forces for their gallantry and bravery. I thank the civil population for their courage in the face of overwhelming odds and starvation.
I'm going to look for Kainene in the towns outside 9th Mile.
Do you have fuel?
Enough to get me to 9th Mile if I roll down slopes.
I gave him some of my Nigerian money before he left with Harrison. We were first going to Aba and then on to Nsukka. Odenigbo took off his glasses and wrapped them in a piece of cloth. We had heard that Nigerian soldiers did not like people who looked like intellectuals.
Can you see well enough to drive?
We passed a few checkpoints manned
Yes.
by Nigerian soldiers as we drove past the destroyed Nigerian fleet, a long, long column of burnt and blackened vehicles. I held Odenigbo's hand.
We did this. They won, but we did this.
It felt odd to say that they'd won, to voice a defeat that I did not believe. I did not feel that we had been defeated. I sensed his nervousness as we approached Aba. Bushes had sprung up everywhere. Small huts were completely swallowed in browned grass. A shrub was growing at the gate of their compound. The house still stood. We waded through thick, drying grass to get to it, and I looked around, half fearing we would see Mama's skeleton lying somewhere. But his cousin had buried her. Near the guava tree, there was a slight elevation of earth, and a cross roughly made from 2 branches. Odenigbo knelt there and pulled out a tuft of grass and held it in his hand.
I cleaned the house in Nsukka, which had been soiled by the Nigerian soldiers. I went to Freedom Square to see the mold of blackened books the vandals had emptied out of the library and set on fire. I played with baby and I wrote. Nobody visited, except for Mr. Richard. It was as if he was more like family.
This is fantastic, Ugwu.
I had left my writing on the kitchen countertop.
Olanna told you about the woman carrying her child's head on the train?
Yes, sir. It will be part of a big book. It will take many more years to finish, and I will call it Narrative of the Life of a Country.
Very ambitious. I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks.
I never quite managed to finish one.
You are writing a book, sir?
Yes. Although looking back, I wonder if I was ever a real writer. I read somewhere that for true writers, nothing is more important than their art. Not even love. I have the title. The World Was Silent When We Died.
It's a good title.
Yes.
When will you write it?
I won't. The war isn't my story to tell, really.
I nodded. I had never thought that it was.
Ma says you're going to look for her sister in Port Harcourt.
Yes. But I'll go first to Umahia.
Umahia, sir?
Yes.
If you have time, sir, please find out about somebody for me.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, sir. Her name is Eberechi.
I'd held off going to Port Harcourt, as I imagined going there with Kainene, and we would look together at what we had lost. I knew she would try to get it back, write petitions, go to court and tell everyone that the federal government had stolen her house in that fearless way of hers. I looked for her in Onitsha, and then in Umahia at the Center for Displaced Persons. There I met Eberechi's aunt, who had told me that Eberechi had been killed by shelling. I decided not to tell Ugwu.
The foreigners say 1 million died. That can't be.
I met Madu in Lagos at Kainene's parents' house. Her parents were no longer hopeful.
It can't just be 1 million. Will you go back to England?
The question annoyed me. No.
You'll stay in Nsukka?
Yes. I'm joining the new Institute for African Studies.
Are you writing anything?
No.
I don't understand how we have found nothing about Kainene.
You love her, don't you?
Of course I love her.
Did you ever touch her? Did you ever touch her? I felt that Madu was responsible for Kainene's disappearance. Did you? I reached out and grasped his arm. I wanted to say, come back here and tell me if you ever laid your filthy black hand on her. Madu shrugged my hand off, and I hit him across the face. He staggered back, surprised. I saw his arm rise, saw the swift, blurred movement of a coming punch. It landed on my nose, and the pain exploded all over my face. My body felt light as it sank down to the floor. When I touched my nose, there was blood on my fingers.
Idiot!
I could not get up. Darkness descended on me. And when it lifted, I knew that I would never see Kainene again, and that my life would always be like a candlelit room. That I would see things only in shadows, only in half glimpses.
I saw signs everywhere that my sister was alive. When I was told that my bank account in Lagos no longer existed, I thought if I had lost my savings, then I could not possibly lose my sister, since the custodians of fate were not that wicked. When Baby asked if Auntie Kainene was still at Afia Attack, I saw a sign, but I could not decipher its meaning. When relatives came from Umunachi and suggested that they consult a dibia, I asked them to go. I drove to the River Niger to throw in a copy of Kainene's photo. I went to Kainene's house in Olu and walked around it 3 times and waited for the week that the dibia had stipulated. But Kainene never came home. Maybe I didn't do something right. We were in Odenigbo's study. The floor was littered with blackened paper crisps from the pages of his half-burnt books.
The war has ended, but hunger has not. That dibia was just hungry for goat meat. You can't believe in that.
But I do believe in it. I believe in everything. I believe in anything that will bring my sister home. We come back again.
What?
Our people say that we all reincarnate, don't they? Uwam, Uwaozo. When I come back in my next life, Kainene will be my sister.
The world was silent when we died. Epilogue. In memory of the poet OKEOMA. Did you see photos in '68 of children with their hair becoming rust? Sickly patches nestled on those small heads, then falling off like rotten leaves on dust. Imagine children with arms like toothpicks, with footballs for bellies and skin stretched thin. It was kwashiorkor, difficult word, a word that was not quite ugly enough, a sin. You needn't imagine. There were photos displayed in glass-filled pages of your life. Did you see? Did you feel sorry briefly, then turn round to hold your lover or wife? Their skin had turned the tawny of weak tea and showed cobwebs of vein and brittle bone, naked children laughing, as if the man would not take photos and then leave alone. I dedicate this book to my master, Odenigbo, my good man. In Half of a Yellow Sun, narrator was played by Ben Onwukwe, Olanna by Susan Wokoma, Odenigbo by Adetomiwa Edun, Mrs. Muwokelu and Eberechi by Adeyinka Akinrinade, Ugwu by Valentine Olukoga, Richard by Blake Ritson, Kainene by Nikki Amuka Bird, Madu by Okezie Moro. Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, dramatized by Janice Okoh, was a BBC Audio Drama North production, directed by Nadia Molinari.